Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, review all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. And at long last, we're talking the 2009 One Night Only, not One Night Only the pay-per-view, but only done once, Breaking Point pay-per-view. At the time, I thought it was a cool concept. Of all the one-hit wonder pay-per-views that WWE ever did, like the awful Fatal 4-Way show, Capital Punishment, all those awful shows, this show wasn't that much better, but I thought the concept was cool, and it wasn't done terribly. There were a few matches that weren't good, as we'll get into, but if there was any one of those awful one-hit wonders that were to be brought back for the upcoming brand split, it would probably be this one, as weird as that sounds. Again, not a great show by any means, for all the matches and all the angles that came out of it. Not a show-stealing show, especially compared to SummerSlam, but still, we'll talk about that as we go on. This was during WWE's phase where they wanted all gimmick pay-per-views, replacing Unforgiven with this piece of shit, but anyway. So the opening match for the Unified Tag Team Championships, Chris Jericho and Big Show, collectively known as Jericho, defending the gold against MVP and Mark Henry. A good match, not great, probably not one of Jericho's better title defenses. I thought their match at SummerSlam with Crime Time was pretty good. Their matches with Batista and Rey Mysterio, DX, were a lot better than this. MVP and Mark Henry, they had good chemistry, but they were really a makeshift tag team. I thought they really dropped the ball with MVP in 2009 by not having him go after the WWE title on Raw. It looked like that was the direction they were going in. I've never heard MVP comment on that before, but when he first got drafted to Raw earlier on in the year, it looked like after dropping the US Championship, he would be headed for the WWE title picture, but he never did. He just stayed in the tag team division, the mid-card scene, and never really went anywhere, which was really disappointing considering how much potential he had on Raw, or really as a main event star, but regardless, a good match. Jericho and Show retain. After that, we have Kofi and Miz for the US Championship, Kofi the champion coming in. A good match. I remember when the match was literally made like a day before the pay-per-view with very little build. Miz had been teasing for weeks that he wanted the US Championship. I believe he pinned Kofi, as they mentioned on commentary during this match or before the match, whatever, that Miz pinned Kofi in a tag team match on Superstars literally days before the pay-per-view. And they made the match official for the show like that weekend. So, of course, people weren't really caring about who won. They weren't really invested in the match up until like the final few minutes. Down the stretch, they really picked up the pace and had a great match. I mean, Kofi and Miz have always had awesome chemistry, no pun intended. I mean, I guess kind of pun intended, but you know what I mean. Their matches have always been pretty good. Definitely not their strongest showing, but still, for the first match in the feud, a good match. Kofi still champion, with a nice little showing from Miz and his first real outing as a single star. A lot better of a showing than he had against John Cena many months earlier at the Bash, which was just awful. After that, Submissions Count Anywhere tag team match. D-Generation X versus Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase. A guilty pleasure of mine. I think it was this match that I pointed out when somebody asked me a few months ago on #AskJSM, I think back in May, before Charlotte and Natalya at Extreme Rules, what my favorite Extreme Rules, or rather what my favorite submission match was of all time, and I think I might have to go with this one. There's not a lot of great submission matches out there, but I really enjoyed this. I thought the SummerSlam match was better, to be quite honest with you. But this exceeded expectations. They went all around the arena. I thought the Submissions Count Anywhere stipulation was pretty damn cool, that they can go anywhere around the arena. Cody and Ted looked great. Divide and Conquer was their tagline. That was their strategy. A very methodical match. Not like All Out Extreme. I mean, they used chairs and stuff. It wasn't no DQ. But the figure four combined with the Cobra Clutch, the $1 Million Dream from Ted DiBiase, forced HBK to tap out, and a huge win for these guys. I honestly would have closed the show with this. Either this or Cena or Norton, because the actual main event sucked, as we'll talk about in a moment. But I thought this was really, really good. Obviously, probably easily the biggest one of the career for Ted DiBiase, in the career of Ted DiBiase. I don't know about Cody Rhodes. I'd have to look back at his entire career in the company, but it sucks they're now both gone. But still, a great match with these two and a real breakout win for them. No pun intended there. After that, a Singapore Kane match between Kane and Kylie in a feud. I have no idea why they opted to continue past SummerSlam. By this point, they started the feud of the Bash, which was back in June, and this was in September of 2009. Why they had the feud go on for that long, I'll never know. The match sucked. Probably better than the SummerSlam match, just because there were Singapore Canes. But you put a necklace on a dog, it's still a bitch. Whatever the old cliche phrase is. It just was not a good match. You could put chairs, you could put flying missiles in the match, and it probably wouldn't be any better. Just Kane and Khali, you look at WrestleMania 23, they just don't have any good chemistry whatsoever, as one would only expect from these two, because they both... Khali sucks. You put him in the ring with... Kane's just not that great of a wrestler to begin with. You put him in the ring with Khali, it brings out the worst in both of them. Kane won, thank God. That was the end of Khali for a while. Actually, I think he injured him on SmackDown, and that was the end of their feud. The end of Khali on TV for a few more months. Punk was backstage. I got to mention this. Cutting a promo on Taker. about how being straight edge, and he took Jeff Hardy out of the company, and Jeff Hardy got himself suspended. Like, he not suspended, but he left the company. Then he got like a DUI or something, got arrested for like a week or whatever. And he mentioned that, which was pretty surprising. And the lights go out in the backstage area, and it's only Jimmy Wang fucking with the lights, and Punk just beats the shit out of him. Hilarious. Just a really good segment. It's not really a match. I don't review backstage segments here on the show, but I just had to mention that it was hilarious. For the ECW Championship, Christian and William Regal finally have the match they should have had at SummerSlam. A really good match. I enjoyed the strong series of matches these two had on ECW in the latter half of 2009. Christian went over. I was a huge Regal fan. I was hoping he would score the victory. He did not, but still a good match nevertheless from Christian and Regal. Pat Patterson came out to talk about being the first ever Intercontinental Champion, and instead of introducing the current Intercontinental Champion at that time anyway, John Morrison, Dolph Ziggler came out to just pretty much berate Pat Patterson and just completely humiliate him, kick him in the stomach. But before he could do more damage, out comes John Morrison to make this a pretty simple, straightforward segment. I think Morrison and Ziggler was originally advertised to the pay-per-view, but they got rid of it for some reason, and they would have their match at Hell in a Cell. I don't know why they scrapped it, but they had this segment instead. Maybe they didn't have enough time. I'm not really sure, but they would save that match until Hell in a Cell the following month. For the WWE Championship, Randy Orton defending against John Cena in an I Quit match, and considering the stipulation, you had to know going in, John Cena was not losing. But still a really good match. I mean, Cena and Orton, as tired of a feud as that is, /was/is, I guess, their matches weren't all that bad. Their 09 series of matches were not terrible. Arguably, probably the best they ever had, to be quite honest with you. I did not really care about their 07 matches. Their 08 matches were pretty throwaway. The SummerSlam match I thought was terrible, but this match was good. The Hell in a Cell match was really good, and the Iron Man match I thought was great. Probably the best match those two ever had against each other. But anyway, I thought this was a really good match. Cena getting the shit kicked out of him the entire time, Orton pretty much beating him up with everything that he had, Singapore canes, handcuffing the dude, hitting him with an RKO. Cena doesn't say I quit. So Orton's reaching for the key for the handcuffs, and Cena catches him the SDF. So a great finish, probably a little too abrupt. I mean, it got great time, but I would have dragged that part out a little bit. Cena doing the whole "I'll take your punishment" the entire match, only to battle back and win. I thought it was better designed here than it was at Over the Limit a few years later in 2011 when Miz and Cena did the exact same thing, and I just thought it was awful. But still a good match, and new champion crowned in John Cena. And then we get to the completely bizarre and brutal main event for the World Championship submission match: CM Punk versus The Undertaker. The match really wasn't that good even before the convoluted fuck finish. It was just a match. I thought, obviously, the WrestleMania 29 match was just infinitely better. I just was not a big fan of the Punk and Taker matches. Punk talked about it on his DVD, or rather, Michael PSA's made mention of it on the DVD, on his documentary, that Punk earned Taker's respect through the series of these matches in 2009, but the matches weren't really that good. They were all right, but they weren't great by any means. So anyway, the match goes literally 10 minutes. Not even 10 minutes. Punk taps out to the Hell's Gate. Teddy Long comes out and says, "Hold on a second, playa. The Hell's Gate was banned a year and a half ago, although I didn't ban it before that. I mean, I didn't make any mention of it being banned before that. So I guess creative only brings up these stipulations when they matter, like apparently on this show." So they restart the match. Punk locks the Anaconda Vice. Taker, quote-unquote, taps out immediately. When he did not, his elbow touched the mat, and they counted it as a submission. Scott Armstrong did the same crooked referee from years later in WWE, and the whole angle with Daniel Bryan and Orton, the Authority, all that bullshit. So Punk's still the World Heavyweight Champion after another Montreal screwjob. Yes, I forgot to mention this pay-per-view took place in Montreal. So WWE doing another classic Montreal finish in Montreal-esque finish in Montreal. So Montreal screwjob-esque finish. So just... it was funny, too, because before the tag team match, before DX versus Priceless, before Legacy, or DX versus Legacy, Triple H was kind of joking that the fans can never really let go of the Montreal Screwjob. Yet, I think it's more so WWE that won't let that finish go, because they did the exact same finish in this show, and they just will not let it go. It set up the Hell in a Cell rematch between Punk and Taker, I get that, but to do the same tired finish in a match that wasn't really that good at all was so mind-boggling dumb. So mind-boggling and dumb, I should say. It was just asinine. This is really painful to watch. So, a terrible finish to a really not good show, and not a terrible show. Maybe not as some people make it out to be. Because I thought, again, the submissions count anywhere match was pretty good, and a great win for Rhodes and DiBiase. The U.S. title match was pretty fun while it lasted. The tag team title match wasn't anything special. What else happened? Kane and Khali sucked. Christian and Regal was pretty good. A really good undercard match. Cena and Orton was pretty good. So again, not as bad of a pay-per-view as some people might remember it as. It doesn't surprise me at all the pay-per-view was extinct after this point, just because the main event was awful, and that was probably what did it in for officials. I don't think the buy rate was that good anyway, so I think the whole submissions stipulation, the whole gimmick of the pay-per-view just was not a selling point for many people. Breaking Point was not a selling point, surprisingly enough. So it was scrapped. Again, not a bad show. I would not watch it. I would not watch the show in its entirety. I would not watch the event in its entirety, but check out the WWE title match, and especially the Submissions Count Anywhere tag team match. I would certainly say that was the best bout on the entire show. So that is my review, folks. Thank you for watching and listening to my review of Breaking Point 2009. As always, be sure to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, right here on YouTube. All the links are down below. By liking, subscribing, sharing this video, and commenting, all support is amazingly appreciated. My next video will be covering Night of Champions 2015 as the upcoming installment quickly approaches. And until then, folks, I'm Graham Giason Matthews, and I'll catch you guys down the road.